we looking
at the camera, or should we be looking?
You can acknowledge the
look at
camera.
each other.
You can acknowledge the camera's there, because you know that's
You're
what
on candid camera.
Exactly. Yeah. When I first watched The Long Walk, especially the first week it came out in theaters, there was something about the timing of the release of this film that hit me harder than I expected. Between the heaviness that we see now in our world today, I've realized that I've been carrying around this weight for a long time. A weight that I didn't fully acknowledge or reflect on until recently after watching The Long Walk. The people who walk with you when the world feels like it's falling apart. I thought of, instead of doing another long walk video inside the comfort of my own home, that today I'd bring you all outside with me to go on an actual long walk. It's going to be a moment of reflection, not just for myself, but also for my 3 other friends that are going to be going on this long walk with us today. So just as how The Long Walk had the 4 Musketeers, I decided to gather 3 of my own personal new close friends to join me on this long walk as we dissect some of the more heavier parts of the story. So with me, I want to first introduce actually the first friend that I met at my church. Do you want to introduce yourself to everyone really quick?
Yeah. So my name is Ethan Esposito. Sam and I met at a retreat, just really connected, bonded over movies specifically, and just kind of dived into everything, film and actors, and it's just been really fun to continue to hang out with Sam and just learn more about what it looks like to walk in and do life together.
So I know, Ethan, when we first met, it was very anxious for me, not knowing anybody there, but I know since you work on staff there, how it is that you approach when it comes to meeting new people, especially since, as we see in The Long Walk, so much of, I think, the theme of it is highlighting the importance of friendships. And I think in this movie, particularly male friendships. So what does that look like for you, considering that's essentially what you do now, is that's a huge part of your job?
I think that the basic human desires to know and be known. And so I think that that's kind of a good starting point when it comes to making connections and engaging in community. So let's say a new person comes in, right? I want to get to know them, and they may want to get to know me. And so asking questions is so key. And in asking questions, then there's there can be really key connecting points that you can kind of branch off in, which we even see in the movie The Long Walk, right? Like there are questions that are that are asked, heavy questions about people's personal lives, about their dreams and these kind of things, right? And so in those questions comes the opportunity to both know and be known in their responses and in their questions that they ask in response.
And next to me here is my good friend Logan, who not only works on staff at the church, but you're also a pastor yourself. I just kind of wanted to ask right off the bat, was there anything from the movie just off the top of your bat that really stood out to you and that's made you ponder about kind of not just life, but the way that you view friendships and relationships?
I was really struck with the theme of vengeance in the movie as a whole. Where you have with Ray and his dad, with the major who killed his father, and his whole reason for being there and his motivation. It wasn't the prize. It was really what the prize could get him, which was to take revenge on his father's killer. And then you had this character, Peter, who was so invested in really just caring for people. His wish was going to be related to caring for people with having 2 winners for the long walk. The money, he wanted to use that to care for people. He was a much more selfless figure throughout, and Ray, of course, develops too. But at the end, he's the one helping with saying, "Hey, let's take care of this guy's wife. Let's make sure this cross gets to your grandmother." All these promises for those who had passed, and these things he wants to fulfill. And then at the end of the movie, you have these 2 last characters where they're both trying to give their lives for each other. And ultimately, you have Ray give his life for Peter. And all of a sudden, the vengeful one gives his life for the selfless one, and the selfless one becomes vengeful and takes on Ray's wish. Whereas I was really reflecting what would have happened if that flipped. And I understand the book is flipped, but I know that the book is a bit different in general. And I haven't read it myself. But what if Peter did end up dying for Rey? And I think that if the merciful person, if the gracious person died for the vengeful person would have become merciful. And I think Rey would have taken on the wish of Peter. And I think he would have followed through on loving those people. And I think about how just we as Christians, like, we believe in the kind of God that became human, that was perfect, that was forgiving and merciful. And the forgiving and merciful and perfect died for us so that we can become forgiving and merciful. Whereas for somebody who is, if Jesus wasn't perfect, if Jesus wasn't who he said he was, who we are transformed into is something evil and unrecognizable and barely human. So that was kind of one. I had some other things too. I know there's stuff on the weeds and things like that, and maybe we'll get to that later, but that kind of stood out to me as I was reflecting on it.
One thing I do want to mention, just kind of to everyone watching, is that I think there's often this weird perception that the closest friendships that you have are the ones that last the longest. And I'll just say right off the bat, though, these three right here, I've known them for maybe less than half a decade, and honestly, I don't really get to see them all that often. Right here, I want to introduce you all to my good friend Luke, who I've not known for very long, but whom I've met through a podcast he does that I have also been a part of, called the Campfire Council podcast. And kind of right off the bat, Luke, I just want to ask you what really inspired you to start that podcast and what you took away from this film as far as what it's trying to say about friendships and the fact that all of these boys that did just met for the first time, but create this unbreakable bond by the end of it.
Well, thank you for having me on this walk with you. Like Sam said, my name is Luke Walliardo, and I am part of a podcast called the Campfire Council podcast. And all three of these guys I've had the honor to have on with me, and it's been a blast. And I think the reasons why I wanted to start a podcast is I think I would always have deep conversations with my close guy friends. And we'd have these conversations, and we always just wanted to have the platform and the ability to share that with the world. And it's just such an easy way to do a podcast where you just sit down and record, and you had that time available to do that where anyone can tune in and listen. And I think one thing with The Long Walk is, at first, it doesn't seem like there's a lot of friendship and camaraderie, but actually as you get deeper into the movie, you find that there's actually these deep bonds that are created. And like with you, Sam, I met you one time at our church's men's retreat, and we met one time, and through that we had the ability to have you on the podcast, and we got to know you on a deeper level, even just knowing each other for such a small time, just like the guys in The Long Walk. And I think it's really cool that through these terrible events, these guys, instead of being divided, they come together and they share that bond. And one very important thing that stuck with me is Rey and Peter talk about how every single moment matters. And even though they don't have much time together, those moments that they have together, they matter.
I think it really went to show the intrinsic value of human life that we have wired into us for other people. And you know, there's exceptions to that when people's brain chemistry is miswired and there's issues with that. And but generally speaking, we have kind of embedded in us a value for human life. Even when the one character whose name is leaving me, but he got that other kid killed. And he was egging this guy on, but once he saw it was really leading to his death, he panicked, and he carried that weight with him the whole rest of his time on the walk. And I just think it shows, like, once death stares us in the face like that, or once real consequences are staring people in the face, they're going to realize that these other people are not necessarily my enemy, my opponent. There is intrinsic value to human life here. And I think, like, we've just been so desensitized to that in our culture because, like, social media, you can pretend you're right next to something when it's a million miles away. And I think we've gotten too flippant with death and with suffering. And I think this is a good reminder that when you're really faced with it, you're going to realize how tragic and horrible something like that can be.
Yeah, so to go off of what Logan was saying, I think in the film we see right away guys are like joking around, they're messing around. It almost seems like it's, I'd say, like a game at first. Like no one's quite taken it as serious within the first quarter of the movie before anything serious actually happens. I think it's very similar to life, right? We grow up, we get to high school, we're in our young 20s, young adults. Life seems like a game until we're actually hit with reality. Like with the first character, Curly was it? Who has a cramp in his leg and he ends up getting his ticket, right? All of a sudden reality hits. And I think we see later in the film when Hank, one of the four musketeers, gets his ticket, you hear him with like these terrifying screams saying, I did it all wrong. And it's like, that's reality hitting. When people go throughout life, they live life having fun like a game. And then they face death in the eyes and say, I did it all wrong. And this comes back to our faith. When it comes to us facing death, we have that knowing that we are going to be with Christ in eternity. And we don't have to worry about saying, I did it all wrong. But knowing that we're going to go home one day and Christ will say, well done, good and faithful servant.
Yeah, I think there's multiple layers to that. For one, I think it deals with contentment. I think that's one layer. And so with that, I mean, like, I guess if we look at the movie relationally, even just in their friendships that were being formed, Peter's really trying to push 47, Ray, to enjoy the friendship that they have. But Ray's like, oh, it's gonna lead to death. Only one of us is coming out of this anyways, and that sort of thing. And so there's a little bit of discontentment, so kind of bleeding into this idea of being. And so it's in being that we can find contentment. And speaking on desires, right? People have different desires, people have different ideals. That's not gonna fully satisfy. If people are just simply reaching for that, once they get there, they're still going to find themselves discontent in something else. And so contentment comes in and through a relationship with Christ, in knowing that our identity is in Him, not in these other sub-identities, if you will, but it's first and foremost in Him. And so then we live our life for the purposes of glorifying Him, which then leads to contentment.
I think when you say contentment, that really makes me think about, because this is the scene that I think about, and I have not come to a clear answer, so I would love to hear what any of you guys have to say about this. I have a hard time personally interpreting what Hank meant before he finally decides to go get his ticket, and he mutters the word, God's garden, it's full of weeds.
I think, and I actually didn't hear him say that until I rewatched that part. Because I went back later and I rewatched it because I was like, what did he say there? And I turned it up. And yeah, God's garden is full of weeds. And I think, and I don't know, and again, I'd be interested if anything like that's even in the book too, but I think it's a reference to Matthew 13 and the parable of the weeds, which is basically, for those of you that don't know, it's this story, this fictional like symbol that Jesus is telling people that he's teaching about a guy who goes out and he plants good seeds for his field. And it says good, it emphasizes, Jesus emphasizes good seeds for the wheat. And then it says the enemy, his enemy plants weeds with those seeds, and so then both grow up at the same time. There's weeds with and clinging to the good crops. And then the servants say to this guy, hey, like, we thought you planted good crops. And he said, well, I did. This was done by the enemy. And they said, well, let's go. We can rip out the weeds. And he says, don't do that yet, because you'll rip out the good crops too. Wait until the harvest, and then we'll rip both out and separate them, burn the weeds, and then put the good crops in the barn. And what Jesus is talking about is God's creation as it is corrupted by evil. Human beings are a part of God's creation, but because we are fallen, we have been corrupted by evil. But what Jesus is saying there, like, it is not the good sower, the good person who throws the seeds, that put the weeds there. God did not put the evil there. The enemy is twisting and causing the evil there, and then is from there you have this corruption. And we want, with every injustice that we see, with everything that is evil in the world that we see, we have this desire to see it immediately be uprooted. We have this desire for it to immediately be eliminated and destroyed. But Jesus is saying God is not doing that, because if he does that before the time of the judgment, then he is going to also destroy all that is good. So when I was listening to, when I heard him say that line, once I actually figured out what he was saying, it definitely didn't strike me. I framed it as it can be a statement of both despair but also hope. I don't think the character was saying it as a statement of hope. I think he was saying it, especially when we see his actions afterwards and everything, I think he was saying it more as a God, there are lots of weeds in God's garden, therefore God has abandoned his garden. Or in other words, is so much evil in the world, therefore God has abandoned the world. And that's exactly why Jesus gives that parable. He's saying that evil is allowed in the world so that the good can continue to live and then one day flourish when the harvest comes. I don't think Hank was saying it as a hopeful statement. I think he was saying it from the pessimistic, this is rock bottom, God has abandoned on every level. God has abandoned me, God has abandoned us, God has abandoned his world, if there even is a God. May have been his thought process in that moment. And that's where as followers of Jesus, we know the appearance of weeds in God's garden does not mean that God has abandoned that garden.
Yeah, so as we see in the winner of the competition, the walk, is promised a huge sum of cash and a wish, which I thought was very interesting, how you see throughout the movie how as they get to know each other a little bit more, as they get more comfortable, they start to share what their wish is or what they'd spend their money on. And there's a big variety of what they do wish for. Hank wishes for the 10 naked ladies. You see that Ray has a hateful heart and he wishes for the gun to then shoot the major. And there's a variety of other things. I think it's very interesting how we depend on humans to fix our problems, our issues. It's such a beautiful thing when we are broken, we're lost, we are in the worst situation, but we find Christ because he gives us the ultimate which is eternal life with him.
You know, like money is helpful. It can be a really important tool, but it's not going to solve the holistic problem, right? When we look at poverty, we look at the broken relationship between man and creator, man and creation. And so there's so many different layers to it. And so I think that the financial portion, right, fixes one piece of it, but really it's not going to ultimately satisfy until the relationship between man and creator is really dealt with. And then through that, you'll be able to steward your money more wisely. You'll be able to handle relationships between man and man more appropriately, and that kind of, so more of a holistic approach, I think. But yeah, I think that's kind of why I struggle too with a specific wish too. Like in the film, a lot of their wishes were lustful. Their wishes were, like full of anger and hate. And right, the revenge. And so I think that I can't, those things money might not necessarily be able to buy, right? Like specifically taking the gun and murdering the major. But money can buy a lot of the things that I feel like are tangible that I would want or need.
I think, and it's Stebbins, correct?
Stebbins, yeah.
Stebbins. I think this character is very interesting. I think at the very beginning, you don't know a whole lot about him. He's kind of known as like the loner, but he does reveal that he is the major's illegitimate son. And I think he has one of the more wholesome wishes that he has. Like, he's not wishing for women, he's not wishing for revenge. He's simply wishing that his father, the major, would welcome him publicly into his family's home as his son. I think that's a very deep and sad wish when you think about it, that he's willing to go on the long walk and risk his life, and he's not in it for the money like probably the other 49 boys are hoping to win, and he simply wants to be welcomed into a family. And he does say that he was the rabbit, and I do think what he means by the rabbit is he has that hope of thinking that he has an advantage. Unfortunately, at the end you see that he decides to give up and get his ticket on his own terms instead of crawling on all fours like he said.
Yeah.
But one thing I want to go back to is it's like an identity thing. He's finding identity in trying to find his family, like be accepted by his father. And he has this very deep loneliness that he's trying to fill. I think a really cool thing is when it comes to Jesus Christ is we are going to be failed by our earthly fathers, whether we have fathers or some of us that don't have fathers. Jesus Christ is the ultimate father that will never leave you or forsake you. He'll never disappoint you. He'll always be there for you. And he will always openly accept you with open arms, whether you want to run into his family or run away from him.
I'm just thinking of if I were the general or the major, if I were the major and I had to fulfill this kid's wish of loving him, it would be fabricated, right? It would be fake. I think that if I'm just playing major, right? Like if I had to fulfill this guy's wish, I would legit just like lie. I mean, I would live a lie. Like if I needed to do this thing, I would live a lie essentially in that specific relationship. If I truly did not love him. And now I'm picturing myself as a major and who's just this cold, stone-hearted man, where I think there's always the potential for overtime, right? He welcomes him into the home, say that, the major's not as horrible of a guy as he comes off to be, to grow more in love with this kid, but I think it'd be fabricated.
I think he could fake it for a while because I think the major would find so much value in that kid's ability and commitment to do the long walk for that. And he would find so much value in, like, he's like, oh, we have an epidemic of laziness at the beginning. And like that, finishing the long walk is the complete opposite. So I think he could fake it and convince himself, like the major could maybe convince himself, like, oh, sure, this is my son that I love. But over time, it just what you were saying is it's not gonna last unless there was some way he could authentically love him. I'm wondering if he was feeling contentment in those moments of, I don't want that man as my father. Like, I don't need him in, and at this point, even this acknowledgement in those last moments on the bridge, like, these guys, even though I shut them out for a while, are going to be closer to family to me than that man up there ever could be. I do wonder if that would have been going through his head a little bit.
Now that actually I'm thinking about it with Stebbins, he's understanding that he wants the major's father to love him, but it's such a conditional thing, right? So he has to accomplish something, he has to do something, he has to put work in to even be acknowledged by his father, who is showing zero love. Now that I think about it, actually might be it is the saddest wish, because all the other wishes might be lustful or be worldly, but those are actually probably pretty true wishes that they have, compared to Stebbins, who's wishing for something that I think deep down he knows will not be true, because he has to prove himself. He has to do the work to even be accepted or try to be accepted by his father. And that's the only way that he'll have a chance. And I think that's just a very, very sad thought, and I think it hits him farther down in the film when he realizes that.
I think at the core of it, there's always love. You show love to your neighbor, you show love to your friends and your family, though. I think, has this film either taught you anything or reaffirmed how you approach love to other people?
I'm going to say definitely yes. Time is short. I think this film really puts into perspective that we have limited time as human beings on this earth. And we know what Scripture says, life is like a mist. It comes and it's gone. And it's so important to hold on to, like I said before earlier, hold on to those. Every moment matters, whether it's with friends or family, and learning how to love people the way that Christ loves us. And even in the hard times, it's so important to love others and just understand the value of life. And then it's so important to be image bearers of Christ as much as we possibly can, because we never know when we're going to get our ticket, like those boys do in the long walk.
Yeah, I think too with that, right, like with the shortness, kind of the brevity of life, like asking the question, how are we to spend our time, because there were some of those boys were spending their time, harassing other boys, and some of them, spent their time ignoring everyone until the very end, right? And, or Hank says, right, like he did it all wrong. And so asking the question, okay, like how are we going to live and treat people in this this short life that we have, right? And so I think that just that question floating around, like, is it going to be escapism? Are we just going to escape and drown everyone out? Are we going to, put people down in order to build ourselves up because we're insecure? Or are we going to love people and get to know people?
Yeah, I think kind of in line with how I even started at the beginning here is just how do we respond to those who have caused us so much pain? And are we walking on a path that is full of hate and revenge that leads to more destruction than the destruction of the enemy we've created or that we have? Hank's wife was not taken care of, even though they were banding together to do that. The one with the cross, his grandmother didn't get that cross. Yeah, that he requested. The wish that the long walk could have two winners never came to be, even though the winner who was going to make it won. All the money that he wanted to spend to help people was never spent to help people, all in the name of vengeance. It doesn't mean that the major didn't deserve to die. It doesn't mean that justice wasn't supposed to be served. But if we walk a path of vengeance, we could be doing more damage to innocent people that we don't even know we're doing. So I think that's just why forgiveness, whether if you're in Christian community, forgiving your brothers and sisters in Christ and other people as well outside of that community, and even if you're not, just like learning the importance of that, and the person who, as I said before, gave his life for us so that we can be a people of forgiveness. That's why it's so important, because even though we want to take justice in our own hands, when we do, we end up causing so much damage to just innocent and hurting people. So yeah, I was really affirmed by that and just thought how important is it that we just be a people of grace, forgiveness, and mercy, even to those who don't deserve it, because vengeance is destructive for so many people.
I know I feel very blessed in life, and I know I'm very grateful for the people that I have in my life. I'm very grateful for you guys as well. Moving forward, how can I be a better friend to all of you guys?
That's a great question. I think not just you specifically. I think this is an answer kind of for, I think, all friends in general that I have, but it can be, for you as well, obviously. I think, like the long walk, it's just being there for people when they're down, even when times seem tough or doesn't seem like there's a lot of hope. I think being a good friend is picking people up when they're down, encouraging them, wanting to see them succeed, even though it might be your failure. I think it's just being more like Christ, showing love, and it's just camaraderie. We need brothers in Christ. We need strong Christian friends to be there to support us, because we can't do this life alone.
Yeah, I think once again, just friendships in general, but this can include you, obviously. Like, at some point I'll frustrate you, or at some point you'll frustrate me, or at some point, this or that friend is gonna say something that kind of rubs you the wrong way. And so instead of letting it grow and letting you grow bitter, or letting you grow frustrated, or letting you, get angry, like, it's important to have hard conversations. And so it's important to have hard conversations with your friends, because life is messy, and people are broken. And so naturally, in whatever friendship relationship, there's going to be times where, you're going to have a choice to have a crucial conversation with a friend, or to ignore it and then let things stack and let different comments or let different things become 1,000 paper cuts and then ultimately, blow up. But yeah, I think, and I'm not saying you frustrate me right now or anything like that, but it's just it's a good principle to have, kind of, in relationships.
And really, there's not a lot, I feel like, genuinely you can be doing right now to be a better friend, and I mean that in a really good way. And one thing just in general for friendships that I think you do really well, Sam, is whenever you ask me how I'm doing, I know you mean you're actually asking how I'm doing, and I think we need to normalize that a little bit. Because there's a habitual, how are you doing? Good. How are you doing? Good. And we move on, especially in, I think, male friendships. And I think we got to be okay with asking that genuinely, ready to hear maybe a longer or more painful or deeper answer, and then also be willing to share those longer and more deep answers.
I know we're ending our walk very, very soon, but I just want to thank you guys for choosing to be my friends, and that's something that I'm incredibly grateful for, and that I carry in my heart every single day. So thank you guys.
Thank you for having us.
Yes.
Yeah.
All righty.
Good honor.
Bring it in.
A third warning.
Third warning. Also, one last thing, that guy with the long hair who took the carbon, he should have done more damage.
Which last guy?
Oh yeah, who shot the? He shot the guy.
Oh,
person and then
I
he
was
stopped.
thinking that too. I was like, I was about to yell like,
Spain!
I was about to yell at him like, turn to the gunner, and your mind, like, he probably wasn't there, right?
Baby.
Like,
Worthless.
Right.
edit that out.
Yeah.